Welcome to Where's My Sports At podcast. Today we welcome New Zealand basketball legend and my favourite New Zealand player of all time, number 24, with 426 New Zealand NBL games, 322 Australian NBL games, 100 Tall Blacks tests, a New Zealand Order of Merit inductee, former Breakers GM and current New Zealand basketball CEO, Dillon Boucher. Dillon, mate, firstly, thank you for coming along. It is an absolute privilege, and me and Phil are absolutely fanboying right now to have you on. Welcome aboard.
Great to be here, and thanks for having me. It's honestly a pleasure. Anytime you get to reflect on your career, it's always a good time. So pleasure being here.
So Dillon, we're going to start with your early beginnings, mate. So firstly, what was your first basketball memory?
Yeah, for me, it was playing in the backyard with my brothers. So I've got two older brothers. One's just about a year and a half older, and the other one's about 3 years older. And so it all started in the backyard, battling in a house in Bell Block in Taranaki, where we we fell in love with the game. So just every day after school, we'd go out. It was gravel driveway, hoop on the garage type stuff. If you're laying it up, you're hitting the side of the garage type stuff. So it was pretty brutal, some of those backyard battles, I can tell you. And we generally wouldn't come inside until mum called us in for dinner, or it was dark, or usually someone went in crying, which was normally me, being the youngest, with some gravel rash or burn of some sort. But no, it was. I guess that's where I, first kind of fell in love with the competitiveness of basketball, and then eventually ended up playing in the primary school team, and kind of went on from there.
Cool. And did you play any other sports when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I played everything, to be honest. I started off playing football or soccer, and at a young age, and I played tennis, I played badminton, I played cricket. Then I moved into rugby when I kind of got a little bit older. So yeah, pretty much any sport that was going, I had a crack at it. Cross country, I used to be a decent cross country runner. Was never good at the sprinting stuff because I'm not very fast, but the long distance stuff was the stuff that was probably more suited to my body type.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, what was your first rep team? Was basketball, like, did you sort of realize early on that basketball was sort of the path that you wanted to go in, so that's where you dedicated time to and got selected for, or did you sort of some of those other teams propel you in that rep arena?
Yeah, so my first team was actually under 14s, playing for, I think the team was called New Plymouth under 14s. Was when I first played what I guess you would call rep, and we went along and we actually won the national tournament at that age. But I certainly wasn't thinking at the time that basketball was my sport. I was playing representative football, rugby, cricket, tennis. So, I'd represented Taranaki in a few sports at a young age, and kind of thought that, I was just a multi-sporter. And it wasn't probably until I got a little bit older, probably towards the end of probably mid-high school, that I realized that I really wanted to focus on basketball and play that a bit more seriously. But it probably wasn't till I left high school, or kind of the end of my year 13 year, it was kind of where I thought I could actually have a go at this, and actually started thinking about the possibility of playing professionally and things like that.
Did you have a late growth spurt? Like for me, I'm 6'5". I didn't grow till I was like 16. I came back to school, 7th form, and I was the tallest. Whereas I know some of my other mates, they were 13, 14, and they were, already the tallest at school type thing.
Yeah, I was identical to you. I was a late bloomer, I guess you would call it, late developer. I didn't start shaving until I think I was in my 20s. I didn't grow. I think I was probably the same. My last year in school, I came back from summer and just happened to be taller than everyone. I actually played point guard for most of my younger years. Didn't play a big position at all. But yeah, had a bit of a growth spurt. I mean, I'm quite a bit taller than my brothers. I've got one of my brothers is 6 foot and the other one's 6'2", and I'm 6'5". So, I'm by far the tallest out of my brothers. My dad's about 6'3", so he's reasonably tall. But yeah, that late growth spurt for me was probably, again, I was I can remember being 6'5", and I reckon I weighed like 80 kilos or something like that. Like I was 75 kilos. I was so skinny, and it's just how it was back then. And no matter what I ate, I couldn't put on weight. If only that was the case now.
Yeah, no, we sound identical. Sounds like metabolisms work in the same way.
Yeah, middle age catches up with us all.
Absolutely.
What was your first high school team that you made there, Dillon?
Yeah, so I started off. I moved to Auckland when I was 14. So my year 9, I guess, or third form year, I went to Spotswood College in New Plymouth and played on the team there. Had a great time there. We actually won the comp in the year 9 grade, and that was awesome. And my brother was actually coaching the team, so that was cool. Then moved to Auckland, to Papatoetoe High School, and made the Prems team in my fourth form year, or year 10 year, and my brother was playing in the team as well, and we had a good team, and we played. So in Auckland, there's like 3 comps. There's the Premier League, or the Prems comp, and then there's I think it's called Senior A, and then there's A grade or something like that. There's 3 levels, and we were playing in the 3rd level. So my school was in the 3rd level. And that was pretty cool, though. It was, we played just in the local South Auckland comp, and and kind of paved our way through. And in my year 13 year, we ended up winning that comp. But we never ever, like, when people talked about secondary school nationals, I never even knew there was a secondary school nationals until I left school, because our school just didn't even feature on a radar anywhere. So yeah, it was. For me, it was basketball was just playing for your school team, just having fun. It wasn't really about anything serious. It was just having a good time with your mates, and there were some good times.
That's awesome, mate. Like, yeah, I remember days like that when you're playing in the men's comp and they have all the dirty tricks, and you learn those tricks and take them back to high school games. So that takes me into the next one there. Your first international selection. So you got selected for New Zealand secondary schools?
Yeah, New Zealand Juniors, it was called back in those days. So, under 20s. So yeah, my final year in school, or the following year, I made. Funny story is, so they had a New Zealand trial, and back in those days, it was pretty ad hoc, I imagine. And my high school coach at the time rang. Happened to be Tab Baldwin, who was the New Zealand junior coach, and said, "I've got this kid at my school. I think you should look at and consider him for a trial." And so he didn't really commit to it too much or anything. And then that weekend, I happened to be playing in a 3x3 competition down at Victoria Park with my 2 brothers. And it was the old Reebok 3x3, which Neil Stevens used to run. And we won it. We won the comp, and Tab just happened to be watching. And I had a pretty good weekend of playing. And again, it was back. 3x3 is huge now. It definitely wasn't back then. It was just guys just having some fun. And we won a pair of shoes, and Tab saw me playing, and then put 2 and 2 together that I was this kid that the coach had been talking about. So he gave me an opportunity to come into the New Zealand trial, which was like in a couple of weeks' time, which was pretty cool, that I'd got invited along. I didn't know any of this backstory, so I just thought I'd been selected like every normal person that was there. Didn't realize that my coach had kind of gone on the back door. And so I ended up trialing and making that team, and ended up actually captaining that team to go to Australia. So that was my first experience with Tab Baldwin, but also my first experience as playing international basketball. And we only went and played in Australia, and we got whooped. We got whooped really badly in Australia. And we went and played in the state, their national championships over there. And we actually did all right in the national championships, but it was obviously a great experience first time around.
Yeah, nothing like a learning curve to prepare you for things in the future.
Absolutely.
Learn more from failures than you do from success. That's a good old saying I've been taught.
Absolutely.
So it takes me to the next one there, Dillon, is internationals, like your first call up to the Tall Blacks. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember it clear as day. Again, my whole career has kind of been built on taking opportunities and chances. So in 2000, I missed out on the team to make it to the Olympics. I was one of there was a handful of guys that were at the trial that missed out, and I was one of the handful of guys that missed out, and it was really disappointing. It was kind of a crossroads in my career where I kind of just was decided, do I want to take this game seriously, or was I kind of just going to go back to working my normal job and giving up basketball. So decided to give it a good crack, and I actually quit my job at the time and started my own coaching business so I could spend 24/7 on a basketball court and really hone my skills. And that 2001 came around, and Tab Baldwin ended up taking over as the All Blacks coach, and Keith Mayer stepped down, and I'd played for Tab for many years at Auckland, and he knew me, and I thought, here's my opportunity, new coach, new opportunity. And the trials happened to be on the same day as my first child being born. So instead of going to the trial, I stayed for the birth of my child. And Tab made it really clear and said to me, look, if you don't come to the trial, we can't select you. We can only select those that are there, which I thought at the time I thought it was a bit harsh, because I was playing good basketball and I felt like I was good enough to be in the team, but I understood. And so basically, long story short is, they selected the team and I wasn't selected on it. And he rang me and said, but I really want you to be part of this group. Do you think you'd come along and be the video analyst for the team when they go away and we were playing in the Goodwill Games that year. Oh, and stupidly, I went and asked my wife if it was okay, having a brand new newborn at home, if I could go away for a month with the team. And luckily, she supports everything I do, so she agreed to let me go away with the team to be the video analyst, which at the time I had no idea what a video analyst was or what I was required to do. But the one thing that stuck with me that Tab said is, he said, you can train with the team just like you're a player, but then when it comes to game time, you'll just video the games and analyze them. And because I had a high basketball IQ, I thought it's an opportunity for me to use my skill set. And so we were training and stuff. And Sean Marks was actually in the team, was selected in the team, and he was playing in the NBA at the time. And just so happened that right before we were about to go away to the Goodwill Games, Sean pulled out and he couldn't come back because of his NBA commitments. And I just happened to be training with the team. And so Tab said, well, you might as well slot straight into Sean's position, and away you go. And so off we went to the Goodwill Games. And our first game, before we played any games, our first warm-up game was against USA in a closed-door scrimmage. So we were playing USA. That team wasn't called the Dream Team, but it was essentially all top NBA players playing for USA, and it was going to be my first ever game. And I still remember vividly, Phil Jones got sick on the day of the game and couldn't play the game, so they ended up pushing me into the starting five for the game. So I'd gone from not even being on the team to my first ever game playing against USA and starting. So that was cool. It was a really cool experience, and they beat us pretty convincingly. And I just remember actually Judd Flavel went off in that game. It's the best game I've ever seen Judd Flavel play in my life. He should have made the NBA after that game, the way he played. But that was my first experience, and went on to play in the Goodwill Games. And that same year was the year we was only the first time we'd ever beaten Australia in a series. So we played them later in the year and beat them 2-1 in a series. And I actually got MVP of that series as well. So it was an awesome personal milestone for me, but also my kind of, I guess, foot in the door on international basketball. And that's something, when I got a taste of it, I was like, I never want to give this up ever again. So, it was just awesome to be able to get that first opportunity.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. You've already answered my question. I was going to ask you about what your debut was like, but sort of outside of that, did you have any jersey swaps, notable jersey swaps? I feel like every time any team plays America, it's like, right, the team must talk in the back. Who's going to get LeBron's jersey? Who's going to get Kobe's jersey? Do you have any sort of memories around that?
Yeah, it's funny you ask, because in the Tall Blacks you only get one jersey, and so you can't swap it for the next game. You get a black and you get a white, and that's it. Nowadays it's probably there's a little bit more uniforms going on, but no, we didn't get to swap any jerseys, unfortunately. Although we did in 1997, we played in the 22 and under World Champs, and we actually were staying in the same hotel as all the teams. And at the end of the tournament, the USA team was staying on our floor, and they were all college players about to make the NBA, and they were all already under shoe contracts and things like that. So they were pretty kind to us and gave us a lot of their gear, and we did a few swaps, and guys were walking around wearing different teams' uniforms in Spain and USA and Argentina, and it was pretty cool. So that's probably that and the Olympics are probably the only times we've ever swapped jerseys, because at the end of tournaments, when you're all staying together, everyone's kind of out looking to do the same thing. So, but unfortunately, yeah, it's not like the rugby guys are, or league guys after games and they whip their jerseys off and swap it because we need it for the next game. So we weren't able to swap anything.
No, that's fair enough.
And like, I'll get a question because my 12-year-old plays in the old under 14s. Because he only had one jersey, did you actually have to clean them after each game? Like, I've always wondered that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the team manager did, but we didn't. But the same thing. I can clearly remember in the early days in Tall Blacks, we'd be washing socks and undies in the sink because you didn't have enough to go on tour for so long, and yeah, there was no one talked about laundry or doing laundry. You just kind of did your own and made your own. And because most of us were full amateurs, and half the team or 3/4 of the team weren't playing professionally. We're all working just normal jobs, and when you take time away from your job, you don't get paid. So you're on tour, not earning any money, having to pay a mortgage back home. So you couldn't even afford to go down the laundry and do a $5 wash.
Yeah, right. You'd be using all your annual leave so you could go away in your tournament. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
like the good old days.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's not too different to probably what some sports are still going through. To be fair, basketball's come a long way, but like shout out to all those athletes that grind it out, because it's hard, it's tough, but you do it because you love it.
Yeah, it doesn't just happen overnight, right? And that leads us into the next question. And these are some things I always wanted to know about that 2002 campaign, Dillon. I've got so many. So like a list of I had a list of 100 and I shrunk it down to about 7.
we had to rein them in.
Yeah, had to rein me in. So the preparation for that tournament, I've always wondered, because you guys came into that tournament looking like you had been fired out of a cannon to play basketball. So what sort of like training did you guys do before going into that tournament?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. We Tab Baldwin, was one thing he wasn't short of, is he wasn't short of pushing us hard. And when we beat Australia in 2001, we went into that series believing we could beat Australia. When we beat them, we weren't surprised. We actually were confident that we had a good enough team to beat them. And from that moment on, we were like, we know we can beat teams around the world. We've just got to make sure we're as best prepared as we can. So that campaign, if I remember rightly, I think it was a 6-week campaign building into the World Cup, or World Champs it was called back then. But it was probably, we were 6 weeks on the road leading into it, and then 2 weeks at the event itself. So we played some of the best teams in the world. We played Yugoslavia at the time in a pre-game that they were the current world champions, and we beat them. And we played Germany. We played, I think about the list, we were playing top European teams, and we were competing in every game. We didn't win every game, but we won a lot. And we were very, very well prepared, and we came in, and all our energy was focused on Russia, which was the first game. So we were running plays that we knew would work against their system. I would go out on a limb and saying we were probably the most prepared team at that tournament when it came to how we executed our plays, how we scouted opposition. We spent hours and hours in video sessions, to the point where guys would fall asleep in video sessions because we'd spent hours in there. But Tab and Nenad wanted to leave no rock unturned to make sure we went into every game prepared, the best prepared we could. And man, and we were prepared. We were fit. We were prepared. We did crazy stuff. We were, like all the things to get us as fit as we could be. We did. That team was primed and ready.
Yeah, and you could tell it was absolutely incredible. Like I remember just being so blown away with how your guys' preparation game plan wise, it looked like you were well drilled and playing to the very limit of your guys' capabilities, and it was just awesome. Like where I remember watching, going, these guys are from New Zealand. I'm from New Zealand, and just thinking that, and yeah, like the preparation there that Tab was and Nenad Vucevic, I think it's his name, eh?
Correct.
That they were going through with you guys, like how detailed were those plans?
Oh, it's like our playbook would have been, when you're talking thickness, we had over 100 plays, and you couldn't be on that team with a low basketball IQ. You just wouldn't have survived because there was so many play calls and so many options. Off every play we ran would have 5, 6, 7, 8 options that you could, if they took one away, you'd go to option 2. If they took 2 away, you'd go to option 3. And it was just, the list just went on. And again, you've got to have high IQ basketball players that can execute those plays and play a role. We had, I really look at that team and think everyone understood their role clear as day. We knew who our superstars were, we knew who our role players were, and we knew, where our role was to come into the game and how we'd impact it when we came in. And they made that very clear as coaches, what your role and responsibilities were, and everyone bought into it. There was I can't recall anyone making any gesture about court time, and some guys didn't get on in a lot of games, but I never heard them once moan about their court time. They bought into the greater good of the team and pushing each other at training. And, that's when good teams, become great. It's when everyone buys into what their role is within that team.
Yeah, I think you're bang on there. I think we see that in the NBA of lots of different teams, right? Where someone probably thinks that they might be a little bit bigger than the team, and you can see how it just doesn't work out. And I guess do you think kind of a multi question? Obviously, Tab, you've already sung his praises, and he's obviously spoke to everyone. But like, what was his approach? Did he talk to you individually, then as a group, to like get you to buy into what your individual roles were going to be? And so and around, because obviously you've got a certain level of skill, but then I think with so many different things, it's your mindset, right? It's like where your mindset is to how well you're going to execute and how well you actually believe in yourselves.
Yeah, one of Tab's real strengths is communication, and he did a good job communicating to the group and making it really clear what his expectations or the coaching expectations were, and also how he wanted us to play and how he wanted us to execute and what the game plan was. And there was no deviating from the game plan. There might have been a couple of moments throughout the whole tournament that anyone really deviated from a game plan because they maybe thought that they had a better option or something like that. But no one was really deviating away. And often you talked about it in the NBA, guys deviate from the game plan because they think they're better than what the coach is telling them to do. And that team was, we understood what our game plan was. We executed it to perfection. And a lot of times we didn't execute it to perfection, but our hard work ended up paying off for us anyway. But no, he was a great communicator, great motivator. We'd come out of the locker room ready to run through brick walls for him and New Zealand. And, and we had guys on the team that were great leaders as well, that at any time, if Tab wasn't, leading, we had fantastic leaders on the team that would pick the team up on the court or off the court, or, we were very, very focused.
And that leads us into the next thing, where I'll do a quick summary of the tournament, and then we've got some more questions for you, Dillon. So in the tournament in Indianapolis, you beat Russia 90-81, beat Venezuela 98-85, lost to Argentina 85-113, but Manu Ginobili, we all know about him. Lost to the USA 62-110, beat China 94-98. I remember that crystal clear, that game. Then in the quarterfinal, you beat Puerto Rico. That was unbelievable to watch. I could talk all day about that one. Semi-final, lost to Yugoslavia, and then the third and fourth playoff lost to Germany, 94-117. So massive games, and just your effort, Dillon. Every time you came on the court, I was like, Dillon's on, and then all of a sudden the game would just change. And I don't think you might have ever heard that from fans that have watched it before, but that was my impression. I was seventh form in high school, and I just remember, because me and Phil have talked about how we were both defensive players in school, and like I wasn't the best shooter. Like I could get it from, my shooting range was about 5 feet, but you coming on and playing that way with the defense, gave me hope there that I could play this game for a long time. And the biggest question there that I've ever wanted to ask you is, what is your defensive mindset when you go out on the court?
It's an interesting one, and I'll start right back to probably what I talked about before in the backyard with my brothers. Every day was a battle when we battled in the backyard. So playing hard and playing physical was just part of my DNA. And again, I was the skinniest kid when I was younger. But I'd never shied away from my bigger, stronger, older brothers. And I truly believe that set me up to be able to be tough on a court, because I just thought you have to be tough to survive. And for me, that's where it started. When I was, funnily enough, when I was in high school, I was probably more of a scorer. Like, I have people coming up to me, all the time, not all the time, but when people come up to me that have played against me when I was younger, go, "Oh man, when we used to play, you used to be like 40 points a game. And when you became a professional, you barely even scored, And I was when I was younger, I could score and I could shoot, and I used to shoot threes. I'd shoot like lots and lots of 3-pointers and stuff. But when you get on teams where you've got players who are better than you and more skilled than you in things, you defer to them, because why would I take a shot when Kirk Penny or Phil Jones is sitting next to me wide open, and they shoot at 10% better than I do, or 20%, whatever it is. So for me, it was always about I wanted to not only be the hardest worker on the court, but I want to be the smartest player on the court and make the right decisions at the right time. And so my mentality coming into every game, and I truly believe, and even to this day, like arrogantly, I truly believe that I can defend anyone. Like, I think, if I was to go and play LeBron James right now, I'd back myself to be able to slow him down or stop him as good as anyone else can in the NBA. But
awesome.
The reality is I probably can't, but that's the mentality I went into every game, believing that, we'd play against Dirk Nowitzki. I went in going, I reckon I can guard Dirk better than anyone else that guards him in this World Cup. And I would go in and believe that. And I'd watch videotape on him. I'd study them. I'd work out the areas that they miss shots more than the areas they make shots, and try and put them in those uncomfortable positions. I would guard them differently to how anyone else guarded them. I'd use a level of physicality and I would play mind games with the guys I was marking and try and make them as uncomfortable as they could, so they were worried about me more so than worried about winning the basketball game. And I'm fortunate enough these days, I go to FIBA events and guys like Dirk Nowitzki are there, and we talk about our battles on the court, and they, and they express their frustrations when I used to guard them. And that, for me, that's a win, that I know that they even A, remembered my name, but B, that, I frustrated them at times in games and with the level of physicality I played at. And, I wasn't the biggest guy on the court at all, ever. But I knew that I could bring a level of physicality within the rules of the game that allowed me to have an advantage on my players. And, I always play with a level of physicality and what I would call, I play a high risk defensive style, which is I very handsy. I use my hands a lot, and I poke the ball out and I slap at the ball. And I just, if I'm guarding you, you're going to know about it. You may be able to score on me, but you're going to know I'm guarding you every time. And I can honestly say, in today's day and age of playing, that's not always the case. Guys get scored on so easily and they just run back, not even worried about it. When I'd get scored on in games, I'd be mad when I was running back. I'd be really mad. And so I went in every game with that mentality, believing that I could stop anyone. And it's funny because there's been a lot of archives coming out when TVNZ kind of put a bunch of the games back on during the recent World Cup. And, people were sending me clips and stuff of games. And, there were times where I was marking a 7'2" center, and I think, I'm 6'5", and it's like, and these guys were outweighing me by 30 kilos, but, Tab just gave me an assignment to go out there and try and, do the job. And a lot of times we were undermanned. Sean Marks had got injured throughout the tournament. We'd got in foul trouble, and, I was tasked with, playing against these bigger, stronger players, and you just got to give it your all.
Funny you mentioned that, mate. I rewatched all those clips, and man, I firmly believe you could guard LeBron James, and I hope you take that confidence around, because man, you're just unbelievable. Which leads me to my next question here: with who was your toughest opponent in that tournament?
Yeah, I think Dirk Nowitzki, hands down. I mean, Dirk Nowitzki is, in my opinion, one of the greatest players in the world. What he was able to do, and I would play the best defense on him, and he'd just hit me with a 1 foot step back fade away, and he's 7 foot tall, I couldn't get to it, and he shoots above his head as well. So there's not a chance I was blocking it. He seemed to be able to not get rattled with the style I would play more so than other players. Like the amount of times I've been elbowed in the head by guys because they're frustrated, but he never, ever did anything that ever, and that shows the level of superstar that he is, like he just used his skill to beat me. Whereas other guys would get frustrated and, use their physicality back, and often it would backfire on them. But he was just always so graceful and so skillful. So I think in that tournament, he was by far the hardest to guard.
Just sort of another quick question. You were talking about your mentality. and your that physicality. Were you chirping at the players to get them frustrated, or was it just that you were just on them? You were just following them up and down the court, and you just wouldn't leave them alone. Was that the
Yeah,
type?
I'm not smart enough or quick-witted enough to be able to talk. When guys talk to me, my only thing is to tell them to shut the F up. That's the most thing coming out of my mouth. I wasn't scared of anyone on the court, so I wasn't scared to, if someone spoke to me on the court, I wouldn't back down, or I wouldn't be scared to tell them to shut the F up. I wanted to play a tough brand, and again, watching the early NBA days of, the bad boys and the Pistons and stuff like that. I loved all that stuff. I was like, yeah, like bring it. Like, if you want to play physical, I might look small, but I'm ready, come and bring it. And so guys talk all the time. And throughout my career, I've had plenty of people talk, but again, I would just laugh. I use laughter a lot of the times where they would go to drive on me and I'd steal it, and I'd just laugh as I'm stealing the ball. I'd just laugh and dribble off, and I know that just kills people, breaks people's spirit.
Winds you up big time.
And as I got older in the New Zealand League, if young Americans would come in and start talking, I was playing when I was 40, and I'm like, man, I'm a 40-year-old old dude, man, and I'm still can guard you. Like, you must be embarrassed. Like, I was never fast, but I always figured that I could outsmart my opponents with anticipating where they were going to play. I would put them in positions where they would think they've got a driving lane, but I knew they were going to take it, so I'd cut them off or steal it as they went to go. So for me, it was mental as much as physical when it came to playing defense. And for me, it was I guess that was, those early days were probably what got me known as a defensive player. And I realized that early on with Tab Baldwin in particular, if you play D, you stay on the floor. He didn't care if I went the whole tournament without scoring a point. He just wanted someone to be able to stop the best player out there on the other team. And in that game, I was marking point guards, shooting guards, and then right to marking centers. It was just whatever the assignment was, I was ready for it. And we had a good defensive team. Look, I certainly don't sit here saying that I was the linchpin of the defense. We had some amazing defensive players. And, you look at our point guards and Paul Hanare and Mark Dickel, two great defenders. And, they set the tone from the early moments. And, we had great shot blocking and Sean Marks when he was there. So always knew if you were beat, he would be there to block shots. And, Pero Cameron's probably known more for his scoring, but he was a great defensive player as well. Again, high IQ, understood where to be at what times on the floor. So we had a team that could mix it on both ends.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so sort of touching back on that tournament, like, were you guys aware at the time of the impact that you were having back home? Like, did that reach you like in America? Like how much hype and how awesome it was?
Yeah, I can't remember if the internet was even around then, to be honest. But I don't think emails were around in those days. I remember because we'd get on the bus every morning. We'd get on the bus to go to training or to go to games, and our manager would walk on with a stack of faxes that he'd got from the hotel reception that were people sending us well wishes messages, and he'd read off these fax messages from people, and we'd go, "Oh, I know who that is," or "Oh, that's so and so," and we'd all laugh on the bus, and there'd always be funny ones where it'll be a best wishes for the team message, and then at the bottom it'll be like, P.S. Mark Dickel, I love you. I'm a 13-year-old girl from so and so, or it would always be like funny things like that we would always set the tone as a really good light-hearted kind of moments throughout the day. So we understood there was a bit of fanfare going on back home, but we didn't know too much because there was no internet and it was not as easy as it is now to understand. But we'd heard while we were over there that Rebel Sport had sold out of basketballs. That was where we were kind of like, oh, okay, it's pretty big. So after the tournament finished, everyone went their separate ways. So some guys went home, some guys went back to their professional teams. I stayed in America for I think about 10 days and went on holiday with my family. My family had come over. So my wife and I only had one child at that time, and we went on holiday. And so I didn't really understand it. It wasn't until I flew back into Auckland like 10 days later, and I was walking through the airport, and people were calling out to me on a first name basis, and I was kind of like turning around thinking I'd know it's someone from high school or someone I know, and I'd turn around and I'd go to wave, and I'd be like, I don't even know that person. I'd just kind of wave and go, hey, and then it happened again and again and again, and then we were like, oh man, how does everyone know who I am now? Like, it's like, and from that moment on, I was kind of like, my life changed from being just the guy who would walk down the street and no one have any idea who I was, to now people understood that watched those games, understood, you know, who I was and who I played for, and what we'd achieved at the World Cup. And so that was kind of, I guess, a life-turning moment for me, where you understood that people cared about what you do on a basketball court. And that was kind of cool to know that we'd impacted the country the way we did. And so I went right back into running my own coaching. So I was in schools every day. So again, having kids coming up to me telling me they watched every game, having teachers coming up to me saying I stopped class and put the TV on and let the kids watch it, you know, like I was like, man, this is cool. And so especially the schools that I'd been in before I went away, that had taken an interest, because I'd been in their school coaching, had taken an interest. So the whole class had watched me. And so, I mean, I still have people to this day coming up to me and going, I remember you coming into my school and coaching basketball. It was so cool, you know, and it makes me feel old, because they look like they're my age when they say it to me. So it makes me realize how long ago it was. But man, that was a cool experience to come back to.
That's awesome, mate. Because you had such a big impact on, like, especially at my college. I went to Te Awamutu College, and just everyone was playing it. And if you played it, they'd come in and watch the games. Like, our games went from having 5 supporters to having hundreds at our high school games. It was just unbelievable, and that was down to you guys. And 100%, you guys gave every kid in New Zealand hope that not only can we perform on the world stage, but also have an impact. And it was just the coolest experience ever to watch unfold in front of your eyes. So a couple of things there is, like, who was your favorite teammate? And I know that's a hard question, because they're all favorites, right? It's like kids.
Yeah, it is hard. It's a hard one. Probably, it's probably an easy one. And it was probably Paul Henade. And the reason being is he moved up, I think it was 16, 17. He moved up to Auckland from Hawke's Bay and came and lived with me. So he moved in to play for Auckland. So Tab had recruited him to Auckland. I think it was in 1996 or something like 95, 96, around that kind of era. It was early days. And so he needed a place to live. And I just bought a new house, and my wife and I had bought a new house. So we had a spare bedroom, and I said, oh, you come and live with us. And so he became part of our family, and lived with us. So, and even, you know, I literally caught up with him a couple of days ago, because he was back from Japan for a day, and scooped him up from the airport and spent some time together. So yeah, he was only because of our history together. But, you know, I think, you know, the amount of games Pero and I have played together for Auckland and Waikato and Tall Blacks, you know, we're still, you know, good friends to this day. Everyone on that team, we're still all good mates. Like, whenever you go somewhere and one of those guys on that team is there, we catch up, and there's a real tight bond between those guys that played in that group. And you know, for me, that was a pretty special group that will always remember that moment.
Yeah. And do you guys have, like, reunions and things?
We had a small reunion at the 20 years, just last year at a game. But again, a lot of the players are overseas. Like Sean Marks is overseas, Mark Dickel's overseas, Paul Winnitan is overseas, Paulie's overseas, Tab's overseas, Nenad's overseas. So there's and all these guys are coaching and doing stuff as what still to do with the game to this day. So that probably speaks to the volume of you know, the IQ that was on that team. Most of the guys are doing something to do with basketball. I think there's probably only a couple on the team that aren't.
First and foremost, like, what's your favorite memory of the tournament? That's the
of the World Cup. Favorite memory for me was just again probably the end of it, when Pero got named in the All-Star 5. There's a guy I'd played with for you know, so many years, and he was always the best player on the court, no matter whether it was scoring, passing, you know, like doing all the little things. So for him to be recognized with those NBA superstars was cool. That there was a guy that we knew how good he was, and the rest of the world had finally seen how good he was. So that was a pretty cool moment for us as a team. One of our teammates being named in the All-Star 5.
Man. So we'll go over the breakers here, as like, because you had a good career, like, coming back to New Zealand. All of a sudden, we've got a professional team in the Aussie competition. Mind-blowing for New Zealand. Never thought they would ever happen, and here it is. So you had 2 stints at the Breakers. Firstly, like, what was it like, firstly, having to leave the Breakers? And then what was it like having to play against the Breakers?
Yeah, well, obviously, it's ironic that we talk about the World Cup first, because that actually spearheaded the Breakers starting. And it was Jeff Green's, probably pipe dream was to get a professional team on the back of that success and on the fanfare in New Zealand. So, but those early years didn't go to plan for the Breakers. We thought they were going to go well. They didn't. Leaving the Breakers was the worst, probably still the worst part of my career to this date. Like I didn't want to leave. The team, we sucked. We had 2 years of being really bad, and there was coaching changes. I'm the sort of person that if I don't think something's good, I'm going to speak up about it. And I spoke up about it. And to be fair, it probably backfired on me. I spoke up to management that I didn't think that the current coach at the time was right, and that we could do better if we had had a better coach. And I didn't do it in a disrespectful way. I did it behind closed doors with the ownership group at the time. Unfortunately, that all kind of backfired, and it got back to the coach, and so he benched me, and it all turned pear-shaped for me, and the frustration was building in that second year. And when they hired Andre Lamanis for the third year of the Breakers' existence, Andre Lamanis, I remember catching up with him, and he asked me a lot about why I went to the ownership against the coach, and I gave him all my honest answers. And he finished that conversation saying, "I'm glad you were honest with me," and I didn't think he held it against me at all. And before I knew it, they were telling me they were going to re-sign me, and I was sitting there just kind of waiting, and they were saying, "We just got to sign a couple other players." And I understood where I was in the pecking order. I wasn't the superstar, so I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." And then they turned around and went on a tour, and I can't remember where they went on a tour to. They went somewhere. And I didn't get named in the team to go on the tour. And I was thinking, if you're about to sign me, surely I would go on the preseason. And this was like, we're talking, really late, like the season's only about to start in 2 months' time. And they picked this team to go and play in a tournament, and I don't get picked in it. So I got my agent to contact them and say, "Well, what's going on?" And they said, "Oh, no, we're still kind of thinking about it." And then like 2 weeks later, they dropped the bomb and said, "Oh, we've decided we're going to go in a different direction." And so I was heartbroken. And I was even more heartbroken because it was a club I'd poured my heart and soul into, and one of the founding members that they'd signed. And, thinking 2 years earlier, we were celebrating having a brand new franchise in New Zealand. And then 2 years now, I'm told I'm not wanted on that team after, pouring my heart and soul to the club. So that was really hard. But I understood it was a business. I said to my agent, "Find me another team." And to be honest, the only other team that had a roster spot was Perth. So I had to end up going and playing in Perth, and I didn't really want to go and play in Perth. For me, it was like I wanted to be a breaker for my whole career. I went and played for Perth and had a reasonably good season in Perth, and from that moment, I was kind of like, I'm never going to play for the Breakers again. They'd kind of burnt me, didn't want me. I felt outcasted from the organisation. At that time, new ownership, the Blackwells had taken ownership of the team, and I was hearing all this because, again, Paulie was one of my good mates and was still playing for them. He was telling me everything's changed. You'd love it now. The new ownership's great and got this great culture. But they were still losing games. And Perth, we'd made the playoffs that year. Breakers hadn't. And I was kind of like, well, I'm in a team that's got a chance of winning a championship. So I was happy. Then I got heavily recruited to go to Brisbane the following year. And it was a tough decision because Perth had offered me, a lot to stay there, and they liked me. And, we really liked Perth. But Brisbane was a little step closer to home. We knew we'd have more visitors if we were in Brisbane. So I chose to play for Brisbane. That was, we ended up winning the championship that year, a star-studded team. We went 21 games undefeated throughout the season. Had some of my fondest memories as a basketball player on that team. Just was a fun season with really, really talented players on the team. Some still say that team is the greatest team in NBL history, but I'm sure plenty of people disagree with that statement, but I would go with that statement and agree with it. And then spent 2 seasons there, and then at the end of that season, the Breakers actually wanted to recruit CJ Bruton at the time, who was my teammate. And CJ said to the Breakers at the time, if you want me to come back, you need to offer a contract to Dillon as well, because he wants to be back in New Zealand. And sure enough, the phone rang and they wanted me back, and I was excited, and I was trying to play hardball. To be fair, I was trying to play hardball, like, I don't know if I want to go back. And then my wife was like, "We're going home. If they make us an offer, we're going home." So, it was a pretty simple decision in the end, and glad we did. Glad we decided to come home, and came back, and again was playing for Andre Lemanis, the coach who'd essentially not wanted me. We got CJ Bruton signed. A year later, Mika Vakona came back, and then obviously we started our three-peat kind of journey. And I remember after the first championship, Andre Lemanis came up to me and kind of acknowledged that he'd made the wrong call letting me go. And that was, as a player, that's all I wanted to hear, was the guy. He wasn't really admitting he'd made a mistake, but he was like, we probably should have had you here the whole time, kind of thing. And that was, for me, that was the moment where I was like, I'm definitely in the right place here. And playing in front of your home fans is just nothing better. Even though it's still a club team, and I enjoy playing for Perth and Brisbane, playing in New Zealand for New Zealand it always feels like you're representing your country, even though it's just a club team. So for me, playing in home court for the Breakers was really where I wanted to be. And the hardest thing for me was when I'd come back and play in the Breakers, I would get booed in my home stadium, because people thought I'd turned my back on the Breakers. And it's because I never have my dirty laundry in the media. So no one actually knew the true story of what happened. Everyone just saw me go and play for another team and thought that I'd chosen to go and play for another team. So I would have people that were my fans in the stands, and I would see them booing me and like yelling stuff to me. And I'm like, you were cheering for me last year, and that's where I realized that professional basketball is people were just loyal to their clubs, not the person. And I had the same thing happen when I left Perth as well. And I chose to leave Perth, so I understand it from their point of view. When I went in there with playing for Brisbane, I had guys that literally used to hold up a Dillon Boucher fan club sign, literally like giving me the fingers while I'm doing warm-ups. Like it's crazy. Like it's actually just unbelievable. But so that was kind of my journey in professional basketball. But I'm glad I came home, and obviously the Breakers, we had a lot of success, and again had a very, very good teams that we had throughout those years, and had some great success.
Yeah, touching on that, how good was that three-peat? I mean, a three-peat in any sport is pretty magical. But and you said the Brisbane Bullets team was the best of all time. Could you put one of those three-peat Breakers teams in that conversation as well?
I think easily, yeah. I mean, those teams were really good. And again, really well coached. Andre Lemanis did a good job with that group, had recruited well, again, superstars and role players. And, I think when I think back to those Breaker days, we built everything on culture. It was all about culture. Whereas Brisbane, we had a great culture, but it was all built on, we had studs. We had dudes who could just put the ball in the hoop. And at any moment, if we needed defense, we'd sub in our defensive guys that could get stops. And if we needed a bucket, we could put it in CJ Bruton, Ebby, Sam McKinnon's hands, and they'd get us a bucket. We had a bit of that in the Breakers as well, but it was more built on culture and what we stood for. And our backbone was the culture of the group, and the family environment that the Blackwells had created at the Breakers. So I would probably say my time playing at the Breakers, even though it was towards the end of my career, was some of the fondest memories I have playing basketball, just because it was fun. We battled hard at training, but we went in and we beat teams on a regular basis, and we had a swagger and a belief with that group that we could beat anyone anytime. So they had to match us. It wasn't like we need to pick our game. Like when we were going to World Cups, we knew we had to play our best to beat someone. When we were in the Breakers, teams had to play their best to beat us, and that was we were going in knowing we were the favourites, walking into every venue, with some swagger that we believed that we were going to beat their team. And that's a cool feeling when you're on a team like that, where everyone's got each other's backs. And yeah, that was a fun group to be a part of.
Yeah, fond memories of those Perth Wildcat battles and that three-peat. Man, they were so brutal. I feel like was it 3 years in a row, or was Perth versus the Breakers in the finals? I don't know
Definitely
if it was.
Two. So the first year was Cairns. We beat Cairns in the first.
Yeah, Taipans. Yep.
Yeah, but we beat the Wildcats in the semis there, and that was the first time. I think Kirk Penny had 40 in the semi-final game decider, and Mika Vakona wasn't even supposed to play the game. He was on one leg, and he played on one leg basically, and he finished with something like 15 rebounds on one leg. He couldn't. I was his roommate. He couldn't even walk
Yeah.
and he went for this fitness test before the game, and I was in my mind I was preparing to play like heavy minutes because we shared positions, and I was like, if Mick is out, I'm gonna have to play big minutes in this game. And he comes back in, he's like, I'm playing. I was like, why? You couldn't even walk. Like, and he played one of the best games he's ever played, and it just that's his legend status right there.
He's that hard work beats talent. Not to say that he wasn't talented, but yeah, I liken you to sort of that Mika as well. You know, that real just physical sort of, not a 7 foot center, but like that 6'5", just super physical within the laws of the game. Yeah, bro, I was always a big fan of Mika as well. Jimmy?
Yeah, so some fan questions now for you. So you're finally retiring with 429 caps of the New Zealand NBL. How hard was that for you?
It was hard. You know what? Had I not had to work a normal job, I reckon I could have played for another, 3, 4. I mean, I still love playing now. Like, I really didn't want to retire, but I wasn't able to stay in the shape that I wanted to be in to play because I didn't have the time to put in because I was working a full-time job. If I was still full-time professional, if I'd earned the money that, some of the guys, to be honest, are earning these days, I probably could have played a little bit longer in New Zealand. I wanted to finish up at retiring for the Breakers in my kind of like, not my prime, but where I felt like I hadn't overdone it. And I felt like, I finished my career on that third three-peat championship. So that was the perfect way to go out. And it was always, I'd planned that the whole year that I was retiring that year. So it wasn't like I decided that, we've won 3, I'm going to bail out. It was that I knew my time was that I couldn't be the best player I could be. New Zealand NBL, because it's a step down, I knew I could continue playing. But I finished and I'd gone into an office job, and I'd put on like 10 kilos, so I wasn't moving as freely, and I was kind of like, I really should be in better shape to play in this league. But I was still, the team I was on, I was still starting and playing like 30 minutes a game. So, but I knew that the time was right, only because I couldn't dedicate as much time as what I wanted to be. And I thought, if I'm the role model for these young guys and I'm not putting in the work, how do I expect them to put in the work? So for me, that's why I retired in the New Zealand NBL, because again, it was just becoming harder because I wasn't in the shape I needed to be in. And it wasn't, my last season, I don't even remember putting ice on my body once. Like, my body is good. Like, even to this day, I play on a Wednesday night in a social league. I don't do anything at any fast pace anymore, and it's probably the ugliest basketball you've ever seen. But I don't finish being sore. Like, I know a lot of guys are like, I can't even walk the next day. I don't have that. Like, my body is, has never been an athletic body. But I tell you what, it must be made with some really strong glue or something, because it all just kind of seems to hang together, and I don't have that soreness. And I always go, if you don't jump, you don't get injured. So I've been fortunate enough to not have too many major injuries throughout my career.
Doesn't blow your lungs as well. Jumping,
Exactly.
man, that ruins you.
And that was what we're going to ask you next, which is great. You answered that, asking if you still hope. So awesome, mate.
I love it. I still love it. I mean, I'm a guy. I think I'll just hoop till the wheels fall off. Like, I really enjoy, and the guys I play with are all kind of like older dudes, and they all have played at some level. And then we've got some young talent coming through on our team, and now we're starting. My son plays on our team. We're starting to have.
Cool.
Daryl Cartwright's son plays on the team. It won't be long before Hayden Allen's son and BJ Anthony's son's on the team. So all of our guys on the team that have got kids, we kind of want to keep playing to our kids join our team, and then eventually they'll bring their mates in, and it slowly will fall away. But it's pretty cool when you can run around on a court with your sons, and yeah, that's a pretty special moment.
Mate, that's so cool. Like, I was just that's one question there, because me and Phil were talking about that yesterday, about one of our dreams is to play with our kids one day. And it's great to hear you, as a professional legend of the New Zealand game, that's one of your aims. It's so great.
I tell you, that's playing with your kids on a basketball court is, that's, to be honest, that's bigger than all the stuff. Like, just being able to do that and have some fun and have that connection together. It's cool. It's special, and it's something that I'm fortunate enough to have done, and will do for as long as I can.
So
Do
next question we have
sorry,
here.
sorry, James. Just a real quick one. Do you still get in the minds of your opponents on in
100%.
Wednesday socials, or you sort of rein it in, or are you still getting stuck
I'm
into them?
probably I probably still sometimes the fire sometimes still burns and not as
Yeah.
much. I'm still a pest, but I don't I don't try and get in people's heads because I don't need any altercations when you're the CEO of Basketball New Zealand.
Yeah, no.
Like no one needs that. And so I shy away from that side of it now, where the physicality, because physicality often there's always someone that doesn't like the physicality.
Yeah, big
So
time.
now I just more play with my hands and just leave the physicality behind.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Whenever I played social, I'd always base how physical I was going to be based on how physical my opponent was. So, like, and
Correct.
during the that first play, they're like being quite physical with me, and I'll be like, "Oh, okay, is that how we're going to play? Okay,
Yeah, that's right.
I can do this." Then, then vice versa, if they're like sort of, if they're not really physical at all, it's like, well, okay, then we're going to have a chill game. So,
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Yeah.
yeah, cool.
That flick of the switch, it's on.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So the big question that I've always wanted to ask you, Dylan, is the number 24. Why the number 24?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and there's not a huge significance behind it. You think there'd be this amazing science behind choosing a number. To be fair, my first ever jersey I played for, and with Auckland was I think it was number 20 or number 21, and it just didn't feel right having it. So I chose number 24, and I jokingly said Jordan's number 23, and I'm better than him, one better than him, so I'm going to be number 24. I think in my era, everyone wanted number 23, and I knew if you were going to go to a team, you wanted a number where you were always guaranteed no one else had that number. And so I chose 24, ironically, just because I knew it was a number that would be available in any team I'd play on, and because everyone else would choose number 23. So not a huge significance behind it. I guess later in my career, it probably had a little bit more significance. I was I think I was 24 when I got married, just little things like that. The number just kept popping up in my life and different things. And it was more organic than it was planned. But yeah, there's no real reason behind it. But once you've had a number, I wanted to make sure I kept that number wherever I went.
Very cool. So we've got some leadership questions, and I'll pass over to Phil. Awesome.
Now, so with, you've obviously gone from hooping to into that professional world, professional scene, of course, but still staying within basketball, which is awesome. What's your vision for Basketball New Zealand, if I can ask sort of such a broad question like that?
Yeah, 100%. So for me, the game was really good to me. I always go, I had a fantastic career. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing when I was younger. I had opportunities to play. Like I said, I played in a primary school league, and I had rep basketball. Had New Zealand trials. I made a New Zealand team. I went away to World Cups. I went away to the Olympics, went away to the Commonwealth Games. The game was good to me. So my number one goal, being the CEO of Basketball New Zealand, is I want every kid that picks up a basketball to have a great experience within the sport, whether they make it to the Olympics or Commonwealth Games or World Cups are relevant, or whether they even want to do that. It's the fact that the three of us on this call play social basketball, and there's still an area, still somewhere we can go and play the game we love, and it be a safe environment, is exactly what I'm talking about. Is I want every kid that says to their parents, I want to have a go at basketball, and they know you go down the road to that rec center or to that school or whatever it is, and they have an opportunity to play. And they might be like me, where they start falling in love with the game and decide they want to do it further. And that is a clear pathway, that when they want to do it further, there's a clear pathway of how they do that, or multiple pathways of that they can choose to go down that's going to take them to the promised land. And I think that's, for me, is I want to make sure that our game is designed for all abilities, all ethnicities, no barriers, that anyone that wants to play basketball can go and play, and there's somewhere they can go and play.
So then the follow-up magical question, how do you go about fulfilling that vision? Like, do you have, without obviously going behind the scenes into your whiteboards at CEO and at Basketball New Zealand office, like, do you have sort of like a clear vision around the infrastructure, capability building, and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, what is really clear is Basketball New Zealand as an organisation can't do it on their own. We require all of our stakeholders to be good at what they do. So the goal is to really build the capability within our associations in particular. but also create harmony within the basketball network. We have a lot of independent providers in basketball that are, doing a great job and have a passion for the game. And we want to be able to, work to be able to help bring them into the tent to ensure that what they're putting out there is exactly what we would want them to put out there, not going against what maybe we are trying to build. So again, basketball is in a really good position because kids are signing up left, right, and center. Everyone I speak to goes, my kid loves basketball and they love the NBA and they love this and they love that. And I go, that's awesome, because that's how I started. I loved it. I can remember my parents bringing home a Come Fly With Me Jordan tape, and I was like, man, I want to be like Michael Jordan. That's the inspiration. And so we need to create, a network of opportunities, but also role modeling is a big one. And again, you need local role modeling as well as international role modeling. So for us, we need to make sure that our Tall Blacks, Tall Ferns are role models for our next generation coming through. We need to make sure our NBL players and Tauihi players are role models to be able to, so kids look at them and want to be like them. I mean, I started as a floor wiper, as actually, like, I didn't mention that earlier, but I was a floor wiper in New Plymouth and used to mop up sweat for, your Byron Vitois and Benny Anthony and Angelo Hill in the YMCA in New Plymouth. And that was, again, I remember sitting on the baseline watching these guys fly through the air thinking, man, one day if I can do that, that's so cool. So again, we need every person in our network to be, rowing in the same direction for our sport to continue to succeed. And that's the challenge for us at Basketball New Zealand, is making sure that everyone's going in the same direction.
Yeah, big time. Like, is there, because you have like that whole 5-year plan type sort of scenario? Sort of, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a really clear vision of where we need to go, and we're right now are trying to put as many hoops as we can around New Zealand. So if you haven't got an opportunity like me and you don't have a hoop on your garage, you can go down to the local park or local school and there'll be a hoop there that you can shoot on. And that's really important.
Yeah, big time.
Just one of the things is numbers in New Zealand basketball, they're at an all-time high. And just on behalf of myself and Phil and the Where's My Sports At crew, and as well the country, mate, I know this is like big Nobel Prize type introduction again, but thank you for bringing the game that we love to all of us and all of us as fans in New Zealand. And I can't say thank you enough for what you've done and your commitment that you continue to show to New Zealand. It's just been such an honor to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Like I say, I love reminiscing. I love talking about my journey, because it hasn't been smooth sailing. And there's, we talk about a lot of the successes. There's been a lot of failures along the way too. And and you mentioned it earlier in the podcast, without failure you don't have success. So it's always good to share those journeys with people. And again, I'm a big advocate of our game, and any opportunity I can do to get to promote it, then I take that opportunity. So thank you guys for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome.